If you had a chance to start a pro sports team, what state would you put them in? New York, Texas, California, or maybe a state with no professional teams at all, like Virginia, New Mexico, or Utah? But contrary to popular belief at the time, people in the Beehive State were eager for a basketball team, and after 2 unsuccessful attempts in California, the Utah faithful finally had a team to cheer for in 1971, as the Stars came to town. Fortunately for them, they were already starting ahead of the curve, as they already had several talented players, as well as Zelmo Beaty, one of the top former NBA centers on their team. Utah reached the mountaintop in their first year, winning a championship over the Colonels. After this, they remained a consistent contender, but they could never recapture the glory that they once had. This franchise wasn't devoid of talent, as several Hall of Fame level players donned the uniform. The Stars seemed to have the best fan support in the league, so it was surprising when the team would fold in 1975 due to financial concerns. But although they didn't survive as a franchise, they showed that Utah was a viable market for a future NBA team. But the Stars didn't start out this way. In today's video, we'll look at how a few failures don't determine the outcome. Welcome to Piece of Hoops, and this is another episode of ABA Tales. Art Kim was a basketball executive that was deeply involved in the sport. He was a former college player, an AAU administrator, and he even organized a team to go against the Harlem Globetrotters on their national tours. In 1961, he owned the Hawaii Chiefs of the American Basketball League. He moved them to Long Beach the next season, and they won their first 10 games before the league folded. When the ABA was formed in 1967, Art pounced on the opportunity, being awarded a charter franchise in Anaheim on February 2, 1967. He held a team name contest, and the Amigos were chosen, as pro basketball was back in SoCal for the second time. Art chose Al Brightman, the former coach of his ABL team, as the first man on the sidelines. The Amigos played most of their games at the Anaheim Convention Center, and since Art was of Hawaiian descent, he also scheduled them to play 3 games in Honolulu. One of the most unusual things about this team was the mascot, who was a man dressed to resemble a Mexican bandit, complete with a pistol. He sat near the Amigos bench, costume and all. When the team rallied, he jumped up and down and shot loaded blanks in the air. In terms of players, a great mix of guys were signed, like Les Selvage, a pure long-range shooter, Ben Warley, an NBA veteran that brought multiple things to the table, Steve Chubin, a solid all-around player, Warren Davis, an underrated forward that had bounced around several minor leagues, and Larry Bunce, who was only hyped up because he was 7 feet tall. The Amigos lost the first ever ABA game against the Oaks, and they would lose 5 more after that. They started 12-24, and Al was canned, being replaced with Harry Dennell. Steve turned out to be a great player and a fan favorite, while Larry turned out to be a massive disappointment, but as a marketing stunt, he was named as an all-star alongside Ben. But this franchise seemed to be operating on a shoestring budget, as when Jeff Congdon was traded mid-season to the Rockets, he told stories of the players having to finance their own gear, saying, "We were issued 1 pair of game socks in training camp, and they were supposed to last the whole season." The Amigos guards seemed to be scared to drive the ball inside, as they were near the bottom of the league in 2-point attempts. Les Selvage was the biggest reason for this, as Bob Bass said this about him. He acted like if he stepped over the 3-point line, he was going to get killed or something. He didn't just shoot 25-footers, he took 30-footers. All he could do was shoot, and he shot too much. But when he was hot, he was unlike anything I've ever seen. Les made and attempted the most threes in the league, as his 461 attempts were more than every other team besides the Pipers. He also hoisted up an all-time record 26 threes in the game against the Rockets, making 10 of them. Anaheim limped to a 23-55 finish, miles away from the playoffs. Despite radio and TV exposure, residents in Orange County didn't care about this team at all, as they only averaged about 1,300 fans a game, as most local high school teams were outdrawing them. This team was wrecked by injuries near the season's end, and since they didn't have enough money to sign an actual player, Art asked 6'6" PR manager Dick Lee to suit up for them. The California basketball market was also oversaturated, as the Amigos were competing with the Lakers, UCLA, and USC. Art lost over $500,000 this year, so he sold the franchise to James Kurse, a construction company owner, and he moved the team just a couple hours up the road to Los Angeles. The team was moved to the LA Memorial Sports Arena, being renamed to the Stars. James hired Bill Sharman to be the new coach, luring him away from the Warriors. Sharman was able to sign a lot more talent, including Larry Miller, Merv Jackson, George Stone, Bob Warren, and Ed Johnson. Sharman basically cut almost everyone that played for the Amigos, as the Stars began the season with 8 rookies. They drew 3,700 fans for their first game against New Orleans, but they lost. They then acquired sharpshooter George Lehman from the Hawks mid-season, and he scored an ABA record 27 points in the third quarter of a game against the Rockets. Merv and Warren were all-stars, while George and Larry were solid pieces. They won 33 games, which was 5th place in the Western Division, failing to qualify for the playoffs. Despite their poor attendance, James reassured the fans that we are in Los Angeles to stay. Their fortunes finally changed in 1969, signing 2 relatively unknown rookies in Willie Wise and Matt Calvin. They also brought in Wayne Hightower, Billy McGill, and All-American Simi Hill, but it seemed like he hadn't picked up a basketball all summer, showing up to camp overweight, so he was traded shortly before the season began. But the one thing that the Stars were truly lacking was a center, as Dennis Gray, Ed Johnson, and Billy McGill weren't the answer. After a 16-22 start, they made a trade with the Pipers, acquiring Craig Raymond, and he would play the best basketball of his life for the second half of the season. He would help them finish 2 games over 500, barely squeezing into the playoffs, edging out the Buccaneers by 1 game. But the postseason would be an uphill battle, as they would never have home court advantage in any of their playoff series. They faced the favorite Dallas Chaparrals in the semifinals, as Mac and George both averaged over 25 points a game, and Craig averaged 19 points and 18 rebounds as they upset Dallas in 6 games. They had another uphill battle in the division finals, facing the Denver Rockets, who had Larry Jones and the league MVP Spencer Haywood. Despite Spencer averaging 37 points and 20 rebounds on 50% shooting, the Stars won the series in 5 games. Los Angeles made a Cinderella run to the finals, facing the Pacers, but they went down 3-1 and were faced elimination on the road in Game 5. They survived 39 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists from Roger Brown to force a Game 6. But Craig got injured early, and Roger dropped 45 and 11 with 7 threes, and Mel Daniels dropped 17 points and 27 rebounds, as the Pacers won by 4 on the road to claim the title. Even though the Stars made the finals last year, they had lost a lot of money and their seats were empty. Faced with the choice of moving to either Salt Lake City or Albuquerque, they chose the right place in Utah. In their first official press conference, new team owner Bill Daniels said that the Stars would be the Green Bay Packers of basketball. Fans quickly gravitated towards this team, as they felt like they weren't just receiving a throwaway franchise, but one that could contend for a title. Their biggest acquisition was the former NBA All-Star Zelmo Beaty. Utah was adequate defensively, but they felt like they needed more scoring, so they sent Donnie Freeman and Wayne Hightower to Dallas for Glenn Combs and Ron Boone. Their new additions really helped them as they finished 57-27 on the year, just 1 game behind the Pacers. The semifinals weren't much of a challenge as they easily swept the Chaparrals, winning each game by double digits. But it was only a matter of time before they faced Indiana, and this one was a barn burner. Utah had took a 3-1 series lead, but they blew 2 chances to close out the series, and now they were forced to go into enemy territory for Game 7. Zelmo, Red Robbins, and Willie Wise combined for 73 points, and the Stars shot 50% to win the closeout game, setting them up for an ABA Finals matchup against Kentucky. This one will go to a Game 7 as well, but the Stars' defense prevailed, holding the Colonels to 40% shooting in a double-digit win to secure the title in front of over 13,000 fans. It took 20 minutes to clear the court of all the rabid fans who stormed it after the final buzzer. The fans carried Willie and Zelmo on their shoulders, as this was a storybook ending to a magical season that they would never forget. For their first season in Utah, the Stars averaged over 6,000 fans a game, which set a new ABA record. Out of the 42 games they had, only 7 of them were on the weekend. The Stars hired a different coach in 1971, bringing in former Utah State headman Liddell Anderson, who ran the run and gun style. On October 5th, the Stars played a preseason game against the Milwaukee Bucks, the NBA's defending champion, in a game dubbed the Super Bowl of basketball, but the Bucks were victorious this time. Utah signed Jimmy Jones from Memphis, and Willie would blossom into a star. Their offense finally caught up to their defense, and they finished with an even better record, as 60 wins was second in the league behind Kentucky. The Stars faced the Chaparrals again in the semifinals, but Willie averaged 23 points and 14 rebounds, shooting 57% in an easy sweep. It was another meeting with the Pacers in the next round, as these matchups were always competitive. This series went all the way to Game 7, but the Stars were at home. That didn't seem to matter, as the Pacers shot 28 free throws compared to Utah's 18, and Indiana won by 3. The Stars kept Anderson as their coach in 1972, but they did make some roster changes. Red Robbins was lost to the San Diego Qs in the expansion draft, so the Stars signed Gerald Gobin to replace him, as he also played center to take some of the pressure off of Zelmo and his sore knees. Cincy Powell was signed to be a backup to Willie, and dynamite scorer Larry Jones was brought in for instant offense, even though that wouldn't be the case. The Stars seemed to be clicking on all cylinders, as they scored the most points while allowing the third least points. Zelmo was slowing down, but Willie continued to play like an all-ABA level player, helping the Stars finish first in the Western Division again at 55-29. They would go up against San Diego in the semifinals, but this was an easy sweep, with only 1 game being close. As usual, the Pacers stood in the way of another finals appearance, and another battle ensued. After Utah squeaked out a 1-point win in Game 4 to tie the series, they couldn't capitalize on the momentum, losing the next 2 to bow out in 6 games. Liddell left the team after the season to pursue other interests, so longtime ABA coach Joe Mullaney was hired. Zelmo's knees were non-existent at this point, so he wouldn't have that much of an impact, but Willie would carry on as usual. Ron was finally a starter again and he impressed, making his first All-Star game in 3 years. The biggest difference for the Stars this year was their bench, as Bruce Seals was the only consistent reserve. They sent Cincy to the Squires for essentially nothing, while acquiring Johnny Newman and Rick Mount, but neither of them would have a massive impact. While they still had a good season and they captured their 3rd straight division crown, 51 wins was their lowest total since they moved to Utah. They faced San Diego again in the semifinals, but the Qs were a lot more competitive this year, as Utah needed 6 games to beat them. But all roads to the finals ran through Indiana, and this was another 7-game series. However, the Stars took advantage of the Pacers' rough shooting and blew them out in a closeout game. Utah made the ABA Finals again, this time against the Nets, who had some guy with an afro who was pretty good. They couldn't seem to stop him at all, and the Nets easily won in 5 games. As Utah fans didn't know it yet, but this was the last deep playoff run in team history. Even though the Stars had won the most games in the ABA from 1971 to 1974, owner Bill Daniels was running out of money, partly due to some failed business ventures and an unsuccessful run for governor of Colorado. The team's financial issues led to Joe Mullaney resigning, as he was told that the team couldn't afford his contract. Former Supersonics interim coach Bucky Buckwalter was hired to take over. Daniels managed to sell the team to Utah businessman James A. Collier in August, but after he missed a payment, he was forced to give the team back to Daniels after just 2 weeks. Zelmo left to join the Lakers in the offseason, so there was a big hole in the front court, and the injured Willie Wise was sent to Virginia for basically nothing. Looking to inject some life back into the franchise, the Stars signed Moses Malone, who was a National High School Player of the Year. Jim Eakins was a new power forward, while John Roche and Al Smith shared point guard duties. But it was clear that the Stars had fallen hard, as after a 24-32 start, Bucky was fired and Tom Nasalki was brought in. Ron had a career season as a #1 option, while Moses surprised everyone with his production at such a young age. The Stars won 38 games, their least since 1968, but it was still enough for a 5th straight playoff appearance. They faced the Denver Nuggets in the semifinals, and they put up a fight, winning Game 4 to tie the series. But in the midst of a career season, Mike Green really stepped up for Denver, averaging 22 points and 9 rebounds over the next 2 games to help the Nuggets advance. By 1975, the Stars and the Squires were almost out of money, as both teams failed to make payments required as a guarantee for hosting the NBA Chicago Bulls in preseason competition. Daniels sold the team again to Snellen and Lyle Johnson in May, but they also had to give the team back to him after they missed several payments. By December, he was almost flat broke as an attempted merger with the Spirits fell through. 16 games into the season, the ABA canceled the Stars franchise after they missed payroll. 4 of their top players, including Moses, were sold to the Spirits, with Daniels getting a 10% minority stake in St. Louis. As a commendable gesture, Daniels refunded all the season ticket holders at 8% interest. Despite the Stars' demise, Salt Lake City had proven it could support a professional basketball team. With this in mind, the owners of the Spirits announced that they were moving the team to Utah for the 1976 ABA season, playing as the Utah Rockies. However, this was undone with a merger, as the Spirits and the Colonels were the only 2 teams left out. Pro Hoops finally returned to Salt Lake City in 1979 after the New Orleans Jazz relocated there. The team has played in Salt Lake City ever since, and while they came close in the late 90s, they haven't been able to achieve the postseason success of their ABA counterparts. When the Stars finally arrived in Utah, this decision came after 2 failed attempts to survive in California, but the rabid fan base in Salt Lake City accepted this team with open arms, as they watched them win the title in their first season. Throughout the early 70s, the Stars continued to be successful, consistently competing for a championship year after year. While they weren't able to win another one, the fan support was unbelievable, and they later proved to the NBA that teams in small markets could work. Thank you guys, I really appreciate y'all for the support. I love doing these team history videos because it's all these just interesting facts you find out. The biggest thing is a lot of these guys, they had money, they came in and they thought that they were just so great. They thought that they could compete with NBA teams. I really wish that there was footage of the Amigos. I really wish there was. You couldn't survive in Anaheim. We're gonna move right to LA and compete directly with the Lakers. Like, I can commend you for, being confident in your business, but like, come on now. But you saw what happened when they moved to Utah, when there was no competitors and people started coming to the games. It's hard because as a business person, you want to make money on your investment. So you don't want to spend years rebuilding a team if you know they're not going to be good the first couple years. I understand that, but like competing directly with a team, like thinking you're going to steal some of their fan base, like that's not going to work half the time. But they finally won that championship the first year they started, like 71 to 74, they were really good. Too bad the Pacers were just more complete. Thank you guys, I really appreciate y'all. Shout out to all the players that played for the Utah Stars. Shout out to Willie Wise, man. I'm still amazed I was able to get an interview with him. Shout out to Willie Wise, shout out to Zelmo Beaty, Moses Malone, Ron Boone, George, Gerald Groven, Red Robbins, Jimmy Jones, Cincy Powell. All the guys that made the Utah Stars great. If you like and enjoy it, hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Turn on my post notices if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe. I'm out. Peace.